Hello, fabulous fifth graders. Welcome to today's lesson. We are going to be working on classifying two-dimensional shapes in a hierarchy based on their attributes. That's a lot of big math words, so let's talk about it. First, let's talk about two-dimensional shapes. Two-dimensional shapes are shapes that are they have two dimensions. They have length and width. So the space inside of them is called area. They are made out of sides, and they have vertices. They also have angles. But before we can learn more about a hierarchy and attributes, we are going to have to learn about candy. Yes, candy. As you can see here in this picture, all of these things are candy. But we can sort them and classify them, organize them in some way, based on the things that make them similar and the things that make them different. So let's start with building a hierarchy of candy. Yes, candy. So as I mentioned, all of the items in the last picture can be classified as candy. But they're not all the same. Some of them are made out of chocolate. And some of them I might classify as fruity. So we could easily sort those candies from the other page into candies that are chocolate and candies that are fruity. But we can even classify them into more specific categories than that. Let's talk about fruity first. So here's a collection of a bunch of different candies that we might classify as fruity. But if we look closer and think more about their attributes or their characteristics, the qualities that they have, we can classify this candy into more specific groups. For example, some of these are hard candy. And some of these I would classify as, let's call it chewy. So now that I have more specific categories, I can begin to sort these candies into the classifications that work for them. For example, I would say that Skittles are chewy and Jolly Ranchers are hard. I would say that Sweet Tarts are hard and Dots are chewy. These Starburst Gummy Bursts, those are pretty chewy, but these are like Runts. Runts would be hard candy. I've also got some Laffy Taffy, some Twizzlers Bites, some Lifesavers, and these weird little things that my grandma always had. But I could classify these into an even more specific category because some of these candies have a filling. So let's see. So while the Dots and The Laffy Taffy and the Skittles would all stay in the chewy category. The Twizzlers, the Starburst gummies, and these little strawberries that my grandmother had all can be classified as candy that has filling. And if we scroll back out, we're able to see our classification system. We have all of these different candies, but by classifying them in a hierarchy, we can make categories that give us more information about them. In our hierarchy, the more general or largest category is up at the top. And as we travel down our hierarchy, our categories get more specific. One thing that's important to remember about these categories is anything that is classified in a specific category also belongs to all of the categories above it. So for example, these Starburst Gummy Bursts, they are fruity, chewy candy with filling. That's the most specific category that we have. But they also can be classified as chewy candy or fruity candy or just plain candy. Let's work through it again, this time talking about chocolate. So here we have a variety of chocolate candies, but we could also classify these candies into smaller and more specific groups. For example, some of them might be called plain, and others have filling. And so we could sort these candies by their attributes. In this case, their attribute is whether they are plain chocolate, like Hershey's, or if they have some filling inside, like Rolos. So Reese's would be here, and M&M's would be here. These are some Hershey's Kisses. Now these M&M's are peanut M&M's, so they would have to come over here with filling. I would say that Tootsie Rolls would be plain, and Junior Mints have a filling. Now, we could classify these even further. For example, we might classify these two as having a filling that has to do with nuts. We could have even organized all of these candies in a different way, based on different attributes. There's no one specific right way to classify whether you're talking about candy or whether you're talking about two-dimensional shapes. The important thing is that when you are classifying, that you are using attributes and paying attention to what the categories are and making sure that you're sorting them into the correct categories based on their attributes. So now that we've seen more of how we can use a hierarchy to classify things by their attributes, let's talk about polygons. First, we got to figure out, what is a polygon? Polygons are two-dimensional or plane shapes that are closed and have straight line segments that are called sides. So let's learn a little bit more about those two words, closed and straight. Here's an example of some closed and not closed shapes. You'll notice that on our closed shapes, the sides touch at a place called a vertex, and that closes the shape. For example, here, the sides are not touching. They do not connect at a vertex, so the shape is not closed. And here are some examples of straight and not straight attributes of shapes. So in this example here, these would be considered polygons, but these would not, because a polygon is made from straight line segments. There are also some important vocabulary words that are probably a review from 4th grade that are important for you to be familiar with when we're classifying shapes. When we are classifying shapes, we will classify them by their attributes, and we're going to use attributes such as their angles, their sides, and whether or not their sides are parallel, and understanding that this is a vertex. So hopefully these words are all a review from 4th grade, but we're definitely going to be talking a lot about parallel and angles and sides. So let's go ahead and use what we've learned about hierarchies, attributes, and polygons to classify these shapes. All of these figures on this slide are classified as shapes, but not all of them are polygons. So let's make a category for polygons. Now we know that polygons are made of straight line segments and have to be closed shapes. So I know this little cloud here, that can be a shape, but it does not qualify as a polygon. This star is a polygon because it is a closed shape made out of straight line segments. This little squiggly squiggle is a fine shape, not a polygon. This is a pentagon. It has 5 sides. It classifies as a polygon. This is a line segment. It's a very nice line segment, but it is not a closed shape, so it does not qualify as a polygon. Here's another shape that is not closed. This is a polygon. It has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 sides. We would call that a heptagon. Another shape that's not closed. A closed figure made of straight line segments. This square here. Straight line segments, but not closed. This one here is a polygon, also a polygon. And even though circles are very, very important shapes that I happen to like quite a bit, they are not classified as polygons. Today we learned about classifying two-dimensional shapes in a hierarchy based on their attribute. We defined two-dimensional shapes. We know that a hierarchy is a way to organize things from general to more specific. And we learned about attributes and how we might use angles or sides as the attributes to classify our two-dimensional shapes. We also learned about what makes a polygon. In our next video, we will learn more about a special two-dimensional shape called the quadrilateral.